Aikido maga, just to start and warm up, Chagar, what is Aikido? It is walking 10 steps down a flight of stairs when there are only 9. Yak ishara. To inari ramz burkuki, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Aikido no rozawar. What is the rams in it? What is this puzzle? What does it mean? What does it suggest? And thus from the Hazara Pioneers Library, presenting to you, this is a very high treasure book. And we go directly to the question, what is Aikido? Which we say Aikido in Azergi style, Maga walking 10 steps down a flight of stairs when there are only 9. Ki tu da qadam thabai azina, ki u asal no qadam dara total. Pushing a door just as someone opens it from the other side. Reaching out to shake someone's hand just as they step back. I'll leave you with that puzzle to think about Aikido. And while you are at it, we go straight to chapter 12 of A Vizier's Daughter by LILLIAS Hamilton, the court physician at the AMIR Abdurrahman's Haram Sarai in 1890 and onward during the Hazara War. The chapter 12 is the return home. No one could have been more surprised when Gul Begum at what appeared to her the sudden change in Muhammad Jan's attitude towards her. During all the first part of her stay in his house, he had noticed her but little, and when he had done so, it had always been with respect. Awalna rozai ki Gul Begum ra urda bud Muhammad Jan has dur duram tasel makat ba baadab bud. For some weeks, however, she had become aware of a certain subtle change in the women of the establishment. Lumzu Khanwar archi ki khatno bud ina taghir kat ravishizina, which she had attributed to the fact that they were tired of having a stranger constantly in their midst. I begana bain as much as karna khatno persanna. Tired of treating as a guest one who belonged to a class above themselves. Khantuma oral mu khidmat ka dabori. Thakair khidmat ka nimora. Kiyaste. Tired of restraining themselves before her. Khud khud nigah ko jam ko falan ko ki falan amda. She knew nothing of the war. As jang Gul Begum ich khabar neya. Nothing of the turn that events had taken, nothing of the fact that her father was now practically a fugitive among the mountains. With a prize on his head. Without power except among a few devoted followers. Without money, paisa khatam, for he had spent it all, archibut tamam kharj. Not yet that the Amir had made a proclamation promising protection to all Hazaras who would lay down their arms. Wa Amir hamij announcement nagada ki Hazara hai ki taslim shuna, pana bayra da Kabul, monar kar nadre, ye elanam nashdanos. A home to all who would seek refuge to Kabul, rewards to all who would help him to suppress this unrighteous rebellion. Wa in'am ikram bare unai ki komak kana I baghiara wa baghawat zinara Jam kana munara in ikram khaim dad, but even had she known, she would never have dreamt that any of her country people would have accepted such terms. خبر خود نداشت، لیکن اگر خبر مشدم در نظر ازو مردم گلبیگم از هرگز دزی شرایط راضی نمشو که زندگی کنه. She had been brought up by such a patriot that she imagined all men must be patriotic. The Khane Wazir Ghulam Hussain دو طرزی که گلبیگم کتش ده تربیه شده یعنی که وطن دوست قربان وطن. This sudden change in her position came upon her therefore with a great shock. حالی یک او رقم دختری خانتمای امده دی مقام کی تمام ازو بیزاری و میخواه کی از سرش خلاص شده. That she should be treated with indifference was one thing, but to be struck, absolutely kicked, and generally ill-used by the men who had been rewarded by her father for his promise to protect her. Any شرط و شرایط بوده که توی نگاه کردنی حفاظت کردنی او مایا تب منوره. That was something quite unexpected, and then her letter, the letter she had written to her father, what had become of that? How she wished it had never been penned. Muhammad Jan was the last person she would have wished to have had it read by. On reaching the house, she had gone to her room, had removed her soiled and crumpled garments, and had sat there along till nightfall, her limbs still aching. Aching from the blows she had received, waiting for the next turn in the wheel of her fortune, but no turn came. Night came, and she sat there still waiting. Sounds of loud laughter and giggling reached her from time to time. And her anxious, excited brain fancied that she herself and none else must be the butt of every joke. That her humiliation must be the topic of all conversation and the cause of all the merriment among these people who had so evidently never cared for her, and whom she had certainly never tried to conciliate. Proud as she was obliged to admit to herself that her grandmother's advice, which she had perhaps carried out with unnecessary zeal, had not been of the wisest. And sitting alone through the long hours of that moonless night, she reproached herself for not having shown herself more amenable. Not to say amiable to the woman among whom she had been thrown and who had so much in their power in the way of making her happy and comfortable. تمام this is not امام دون بین زنا چیز ما میخوایم اینجا خانتون ما باشم خود خوره تنبیه من ندارم. She realized at last for the first time that not only was she now probably among people who were indifferent to her, but among people who were quite capable of showing her open enmity and even maltreating her. Wearied at length, she fell asleep, and when she woke up, it was with a start and a consciousness that there was something wrong. I'll just stay here where I am today, she thought, or at any rate till some of them come and look for me and inquire what is the matter. Meine min shtom taki goin ez na baya kichi gaba. Khashim gada doktor. But the sun rose up to its zenith, then sank slowly behind the hills, and still they did not come. Everyone seemed to have forgotten her very existence, which perhaps wounded her pride more than the most violent abuse. At last, driven by hunger, descended the stairs and entered the room which the women generally occupied. Her entrance was the signal for giggling and nudgings and ill-suppressed jokes. I should like my food, the girl said, reddening. I am hungry. Well, there is no food for you now, Muhammad Jan's mother answered shortly. If you wanted food, why did you not come down while we were having ours? There is none left now. We have given the remainder to the men servants, and it's not much they will leave. But you can go on and see what's there outside. The girl turned to look. Her doing so was a signal for a loud outburst of laughter. Ha 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 ha. There was nothing, of course, left but some broken pieces of bread. Quickly she stooped and picked these from among the remnants of the meal and hid them among the folds of her shawl, unperceived as she both hoped and thought. But turning around, she came face to face with Muhammad Jan. Glad to eat to dog's food? I see after your day of sulks. That is as it should be. You'll soon learn how to behave under my tuition. That evening she was not left unmolested as she had been on the previous one. At short intervals, the women kept opening her door. And peeping in and laughing, she knew not at what. And probably no more did they. The girl felt stung to the quick. Inesh Zani Jariya. Fikr na maga, I am 19 miles from home. Faqad knows the meal. She said to herself, and what is that? Why should I stay here to bear all these insults? I shall escape. My father will not blame me when he knows. And so she munched her crusts in silence, but with a deep resolve growing up in her heart, she would escape, and that soon. Next day, when she smelt the fresh cooked food being brought in from the kitchen, she went downstairs and was surprised to find how weak she felt after her 2 days starvation. بخي بيشتمشي متر طريق مش راقشتنا متنا دروز قش نامنده. She took her customary place. The Jay Khushraf. That's no longer the place for you, Muhammad Jan's mother said. We do not give people the place of honor who cannot afford to pay us even for what they eat. There is a place for you, pointing to the extreme end of the dirty cloth that was laid upon the floor. So Gul Begum sat down with a sigh and waited till some food should be passed to her and to the women who sat by her and who were practically servants in the house. She, however, said nothing and minded it less than she would have expected. She had made up her mind. She was going home. To danger, perhaps, but at any rate, not to insults. The khatar morum, the beiztina. And with this idea in her mind, she ate well when her turn came, the others giggling and staring at her as she did so. That night, when all was still, she made her way safely down the stairs and by dawn was nearing her beloved home. She could stand no more of the insults and maltreatments to which she had lately fallen a victim. She grew weary with her long march through the dead of the night after all she had gone through, but the knowledge that she was nearing home sustained her, and her heart beat fast at the thought of meeting her beloved father. And throwing herself in his arms and telling him all her woes, but as she got within sight of the village, she became conscious of some change. دی فکرایه که ما بورم دیگه پدر خور ببینم شکایت ها کنم گریه کنم که مرا چقدر به عزت کردنی دم قریه که نزدیک میشه میبینه که چیز تغییر کرده. Some want of life about the place which she could not have defined. آثار زندگی معلوم نمیشه که پشتمال رهیه یا مثلا چراگاه یا کسی دور بری قریه کار منن نه. Are the men indeed so late in beginning their day's work? مرد که امروز بیدار نشده پشت کار بر نشده امروز. She said to herself, I'm glad to have found them out. It must be looked so. It is time the farmers were seeing to their crops. How strangely late everything seems. Arrived at her home, the girl half threw herself into her mother's arms as she opened the door to admit her, almost knocking down poor Halima, who was unused to such demonstrations and therefore unprepared for them. Good gracious girl, the elder woman said anxiously, and with the old peevish whine her daughter knew so well. What is the matter now? What further ill news do you bring us, that you come upon us in this way? Further ill news, mother? The girl replied breathlessly, what ill news is there? I have heard nothing of any of you for months. Not heard of the war? Not heard of devastating land? Not heard of the prisoners that have been taken? Nor of the slaves that have been made? که چند نفر غلام شد، چند نفر بندیه، چند نفر کشته شد. Good gracious, are you all asleep in your village? Did you know nothing of the war? و تمام شما خوابید؟ And what of my father? The girl asked eagerly. Say he is well, mother. Say he is well. And she almost shook the older woman as she spoke. I know nothing of him at all, nothing at all, poor Halima replied, almost weeping. Only that he left here with almost every man in the village that could hold a gun, and that he has not returned. And my uncle? Gasped Gul Begum. And your uncle with him, the wretched woman murmured. We're all left, all deserted. If the Afghans find their way here, we shall meet with the fate of many another flourishing village. Our homes will be left desolate, our goods will be at their mercy, and we ourselves shall be carried off as slaves. This is no way of defending the country. I say, leaving only a few old hoary-headed detorts and herds to look after the homes while all men marched off, God knows where, to meet the enemy. هیچ رقم دفاعی وطنه. پس من داره اینجا اشتر که مال زندگی رو پیش ببره خودم چما گم. Oh mother, the girl said piteously, what a homecoming. Hey, ما گفتم خانه برم. Yes, what a homecoming indeed, her mother answered sadly. But that reminds me, what brings you home? تو کجا مایی؟ What has become of Muhammad Jan? Is he too at the war? And even if so, why does he send you here? جنگ رفتم Muhammad Jan. بزم تو چرا اینجام دی؟ Mother, the girl said, hanging her head, Muhammad Jan has not gone to the war, and he has not sent me home. Dear mother, forgive me. The girl went on, almost weeping. I have run away. Protect me. And she tried, in a few words, to tell her mother all that had occurred. Their talking brought the old grandmother to the door, anxious to know what news there was, but little expecting to see her granddaughter, whom, truth to tell, she looked upon as practically married and done for. مگه تو اینجا چیز کار نه دختر؟ Well, I never, the old lady said when she heard all that Gul Begum had to say. وقتی داستان گل بگم میشنوم مگم Well, I never. ما گفتم تو. To think that Muhammad Jan should have turned around on you like that just because he had heard of our misfortune. که مو رو دیزی بدبختی رسیدیال تو یرقم قدس تو رفتار کده and knew that there was but a poor chance of his ever getting a dowry. که مو جیز دیده نمیتی رزی خاطره. As a matter of fact, as I always said, if you were to go to that man at all, you ought to have gone to him as his wife, taking your dowry with you at the time of your marriage. I never did hold with that arrangement of your father's, and no more I ever shall. I always said no good should come of it. ما خواهد گفتم که نمی چلا نکی نمی کاره. Well, let me in and let me rest, the girl said wearily. I have had hardly any food for the last 3 days. سه روز من نان نخوردم. And I feel weak and faint for want of something to eat. And so she entered her home and rested, and soon little Marwari, delighted to see her favorite sister, rushed up to her. Rizgak khwarshi Marwari. And when she had had a good meal of bread and curd, she fell asleep with her head in her little sister's lap. On waking, the news that greeted her on all sides was no more cheering. Everywhere, so it seemed to her, was death, devastation, defeat, and slavery, and no news of her father. Give me a change of clothes, mother, the girl said later in the day. I feel I need one badly. I forgot all about such things in my anxiety last night. A change of clothes? Halima exclaimed. A change of clothes? Where am I to get clothes from? For you. What did I tell you when you went away? Taking the great bundle with you? I said leave some at home. But no, said your father. Let her take them all. My daughter must not go among these people as a beggar. And now, what is the consequence? That here you are home again with nothing to put on your back. The girl hung her head. You did say so, mother. But who was to know what was in store for us? Who was to tell that the war would be carried on to this extent? And that we should be left in such a plight. Well, another time it will teach you. And perhaps your father too. That though I may be of very little account in anyone's eyes, that I sometimes know better than the wisest of you. What do you say, mother? Thus addressed, the old lady shook her head despondingly. I say, of course, that as the head of this house, now Ghulam Hussain is no longer here. That your word should, of course, be respected. But no one could have foretold the miseries of this war. I always thought our army would everywhere prove victorious. That is what the mullah said. That's not what my father said. Gul Begum said sadly. I remember his words so well. I can hear him say them even now. We shall not be victorious. Then it's your father that has brought this ill luck on us. Halima exclaimed angrily. What on earth did he mean by prophesying misfortunes to his own nation? که مو نمبری مو بدبخت مشی فلان مشی امیر خم آدم مگه. I call such speeches as that but little better than treason. به حساب غداری ما حساب مونه میگه بارا. Gul Begum smiled. It was no good arguing with her mother. There never was any reason in her tirade. از قصه منطق و دلیل نبود. I may see what there is in the store and get something to make myself a new dress. May I not, mother? Mithunam? The girl asked. Oh, yeah. Go to the cupboard and take out whatever there is and use it for any purpose you like. Her mother replied testily. When it's all finished, there will be nothing more to go to the cupboard for. And at the rate things are going on at present, that time is not far distant. There was a little annoying pain at Gul Begum's heart as she listened to her mother. She seemed so little glad to see her back. Or if she were glad, she had a strange way of showing it. How different it would all have been had her father been at home. What a warm embrace would have been in store for her. What gladness and what a rest. The girl sighed. Where is he? What has become of him? Is he still alive? God grant he may not be a prisoner. Better dead than that. As bandi ke ta murda better. Towards afternoon, the neighbors all came crowding in. Amsaigo kul jamshda. Gul Begum is back? What is the meaning of this? They all exclaimed. Why, we thought she was married by now and settled for life. Al-Khanisha, watch that. It's time she was settled too. Halima, one of the elder women, said seriously, this Muhammad Jan may not be much of a match for Ghulam Hussein's daughter, but he is at any rate better than no one. Strange that with so handsome a face, no one should come forward to seek a girl in marriage. Plenty have come forward. Kalo khasgar dashta, Halima replied indignantly. My girl is not short of suitors, but her father is difficult to please. And is he not right? She could abuse her husband well herself at times. But like many another more civilized women, she was not going to stand here and bear other people question his wisdom. These are not the times to keep unmarried girls at home. The other went on pretentiously. She is named on Muhammad Jan. Let her go to him in marriage, I say. Azalam khuda namish kada khub pas reiku. Arusi bidiri khalas. Gul Begum sat still and listened. What these women said cut like very knives into her heart. And for once, she almost questioned her father's wisdom in providing for her temporary safety in the way he had done. And thus, we conclude chapter 12, my dear dosto, teenagero, Nosago, Bakulo, Ajego, wherever in the Hazara communities around the world you may be, in any continent, we would like to say thank you for listening to this, being part of this novel by LILLIAS Hamilton. And a lot of probing emotions are reviving, feelings are coming out, scenarios, though it's a 130 years old story. Based on true events, devastating, deadly, cruel. Still continuing, unfortunately. That's the jeene ki ahmiyat, the importance of living. Those of you who have been through war and migration, and I think Hazaras have been, this is the destiny for the last 130 years, then you must know that you must have paid a lot of price for life. How much would you like to be alive? Especially when there is war going on your mind, on your body, on your heart. That's why we say it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Haikido Nauruz Zawar. Haikido.